Hey everybody, behind the camera here, this is Zach Rosen from The New Gay. We're at Soho Cafe in Washington, D.C. with a queer you should know. This is Amy Weston.
Hey.
Amy, the title of this video is called Amy Weston, First Trans Astronaut. So tell us, first off, we'll get to the astronaut part in a second, but tell us what you do to start off.
So I am a cryogenic technician at NASA Goddard up in Greenbelt, way at the end of the Green Line. And so what I do, what that means is I spend most of my days figuring out ways to make things very, very cold. Like less than 1/10 of a degree above absolute zero cold. So once a week, roughly, I create a tiny little space that's colder than any other place in the universe. And that's sort of my claim to fame at the moment, until I become an astronaut, of course.
And how close are you to becoming an astronaut, if you don't mind me asking?
So this could be a very long story. So when I was in first grade, I wanted to be an astronaut. I mean, who doesn't want to be an astronaut when they're in first grade? And so for a long time, like that was like,
I realized I'm on a big bus route.
Yeah. So for a long time, that was sort of the dream type aspiration until just this year when I got a job with NASA, which was my second place first grade dream. So when I was in first grade, it was either be an astronaut or work for NASA. So now I'm working for NASA, and I'm setting my sights on being an astronaut. How close am I? Well, I mean, there are any number of reasons why I wouldn't be able to be an astronaut.
Like what?
Well, I mean, like I could just like fail one of the very simple medical tests. They have a whole battery of them. I'm in great physical shape, but really, it's stuff like your family has a history of kidney stones or something like that, right? But in terms of like being poised to go for it, I'm in a really good place. I'm working for NASA. I'm getting the engineering training I need, especially if our space mission gets approved. In which case, I will be certified to like work on space grade engineering projects, which is really a pretty major step. That's great.
What comes after the space grade certification?
Well, after that, it's the real application to be in the astronaut corps itself. That involves a few rounds of interviews and resume submissions. That's just like any other job, right?
Except you go to space at the end of it.
Except you go to space at the end of it. In reality, astronauts only spend about 1% of their time going to space, and most of the rest of the time is spent like going to classrooms and talking to kids and doing paperwork at a desk and talking to the astronauts who are in space, and working out all the logistics and everything. It's actually a pretty thankless job, but
if it did work out, how long would it take? Like, how many years could I see you on the news?
If it did, well, that's sort of up in the air right now because there are a lot of major changes in the space program going on. So I would say like in about 10 years. That's probably, that's if I were to make a guess, I would say 10 years from now. If I were going to be an astronaut, that's when it would be.
And would you in fact be the first trans astronaut?
Yes, I would. I mean, there may have been closeted trans astronauts before. Like, I don't really want to call that into question with any of the astronauts who have flown, but you know, as far as like out trans people, I would be the first, unless my friend Genesis gets there first. But that's we're sort of hoping to make it at the same time.
Well, awesome. Anything else you want to tell everyone before we kick this off? You're telling us something you're reading about going to Mars in a book.
Yes. So right now I'm reading Packing for Mars, which is a book about sort of the nitty-gritty human aspects of spaceflight. And the chapter that I just finished up is that's about I guess like sexuality on a really long space flight, where you're isolated from mission control and don't have anyone to talk to or connect with. And the thing that they were saying was that for future astronauts, for astronauts on long missions, like missions to Mars, they're going to need to select people who are much more open-minded sexually than people that they've selected before.
That could make some Mars orgies, theoretically.
It could mean some Mars orgies. I mean, mission control isn't going to be in constant contact, so they don't have to know. And it definitely means more fluid sexuality, and possibly some experimentation with just the logistics of having sex in space, which is a really hard thing to do. Consider that when you're having sex on the ground, like your gravity's pulling you down, and the friction of your body against the ground is like keeping you still, and also keeping your bodies pressed together, right? But in space where there's no gravity, Newton's laws are in full effect. So if you push against something, it's going to push against you, and you're going to fly apart. So that causes some interesting problems, and there are I know some researchers who are working on strap and tie contraptions to hold people together in low gravity. It could be a pretty lonely place. I mean, it's hard to even give someone a hug when you're floating around in space. So
I think that's a good note as any to stop it. Thanks for talking to us, Amy.
Thank you, Zach.
Take care.
You too.